Hello, folks. I'm delighted to be joined today by Gary Waite. Gary's got a very successful YouTube channel called Gary Does Solar, and we're here today really to talk about solar panels. I know nothing about it. I've got two electric cars. Lots of you watching have got electric cars, and you might be thinking about solar. Maybe you're as naive as I am and you don't know much about solar, so I'm going to ask Gary some probably really silly questions and he could give me some really probably obvious answers. So here we
Yeah.
go. Hi, Gary.
Well, thanks, Jim, for inviting me on your channel. Yeah, I've been doing solar for a couple of years now, and I started the channel only really to help people because when I first started looking at solar panels for my own house, it was just like a minefield, just trying to find out information about it so that you could make a half decent decision because it's a lot of money. And so yeah, that's what got me started. And the channel's been going for a couple of years now. One video became, I think I've done about 40 now. It's like a drug, it's like, but I really enjoy it, and I hope that I'm helping people at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be working because you've done 40 videos and I think you've got nearly as many subscribers as I've got with about 700 and something. So it's obviously hitting home and it's probably an underserved niche, really.
Yeah, I mean, we're both YouTubers and we look at the analytics, don't we, to see, because you want your channel to be growing because that means you're doing something that's, helping people, it's worthwhile. So yeah, I think I'm growing at about 5% a month, which is quite good. I'd like to get further reach, wouldn't we all? But it takes time. There are literally millions of people out there with YouTube channels, so it does take time. But hopefully, for both you and I think good quality content should hopefully, get the word out, and people, if they like the videos, they'll tell their friends, and then they'll watch it. So I'm happy with that.
Yeah, good. So on the solar panel front, obviously I've got two electric cars now. I'm on 𝘼𝙁𝙁𝙄𝙇𝙄𝑼𝙏𝑎𝑐 Intelligent Go.
Yep.
So they've just dropped the prices. I did a video about that recently, but 7p overnight for me now, and
it's amazing.
3 or something during the day. So it's costing sort of the square root of bugger all to charge the cars.
Yeah.
And I wonder if, by the way, my link to 𝘼𝙁𝙁𝙁 is in the video description. Sign up for that. 50 quid for you, 50 quid for me. Sorry, I had to get a plug in. But I'm wondering now if solar, would it make any sense from a financial point of view? Obviously, we can look at it from the point of view of trying to produce renewable energy and not burning things to get our energy, but financially.
Good question. And actually, for me, it was looking at it from a financial angle only initially. And so if you think back 2 years ago, I mean, in the UK, energy prices just shot up, and we had the problem with the Russian invasion. Gas prices just went through the roof, and consequently, we all suffered in terms of our electricity and gas costs. And so, for our house, I mean, we're a 5-bedroomed house, so typically 4 or 5 people living there at any one time. But when we looked at our electricity usage, it was almost double what the sort of national average would be for a 5-bedroom house. And we just couldn't figure out why that was. So you do the whole thing, you go around the house, checking what appliances you've got, what's actually still on overnight that, is just burning electricity that you don't want to. But we couldn't really find too much. I mean, I've got 3 children, they're all using computers. One of my sons has got a really big computer rig in his bedroom, so that's probably using quite a lot. But, and to give you an idea of the costs, I mean, it's ridiculous, but our gas bill was something like £3,000 a year.
Wow.
And our electricity bill was about the same.
Wow.
Which is just madness. So I was thinking, what can I do about this? And so I started looking into solar panels. A neighbour of mine had solar panels on his house, and they were there for about 7 or 8 years, and he had an EV, so that kind of all made sense. But I really knew nothing about it. I mean, I'm sort of technology focused in my career anyway, so I understand the principles. I'm qualified as an electronic engineer, believe it or not, but I mainly did software. So I thought I'd look into it and just see how much would it cost, what would that actually do for me, how much energy from the sun would it actually generate? Would it cover what I'm using on a daily, weekly, monthly, annual basis. So looked into it, and I thought, wow, this, I'm not going to make money out of it. I'm not going to become a millionaire, but it will cover my energy costs over a period of certainly less than 10 years was what I was looking at as a basis to work on. And but then looking into it to find out which panels do you need to buy, what is an inverter? That's a piece of equipment that you need to go with the panels, because the panels generate DC electricity, but your house needs AC electricity, so you need a box that can convert that, and that's called an inverter for some reason. So which one should you buy? How big should you buy it? And then you have to look at your house. Which way does your house face? If you've got a roof with not a lot on it, so a plain roof that's facing south, that's almost ideal. Because, as you know, the sun tracks across the sky from east to west, but it's generally in the southerly direction. And luckily our house was like that. The only problem was we had a loft conversion done about 10 years ago, so we had Velux windows. So that presented an additional challenge. What do you do about that? But even if your house faces east-west, so you don't have a south-facing roof, but you've got east-west facing roofs, that's actually good as well. It just means you have to put panels on both roofs. But actually panels are probably the cheapest part of the system. So then I looked into doing some calculations, and because I was a software engineer, I thought I'd write some software. So I wrote a little utility for myself initially, but then I thought I'd share it with other people so that they could just punch in all the numbers about their house, which direction it faced, whereabouts in the country you are, because that's another factor. In Scotland, where I'm from, you won't get the same amount of solar generation as you will towards the south coast of England. And then there's other factors which, if you think about it, of course the sun doesn't shine all the time. It's generally in the summer rising from maybe 6 a.m. at its height, sort of midday, and then maybe sundown around anywhere between 6 and 8 p.m. So, but that's not necessarily when you're using electricity or when you need electricity. So that becomes a problem. So, I mean, you could run your dishwasher and your washing machine, in the middle of the day. So that way, any solar that's being generated is going straight into those heavy appliances. So that's a good thing to do. But there is another way, of course, and that's to have what's called a home battery, which is nothing more than a massive battery, probably the biggest battery you'll ever own outside of an electric car. And you just buy this and put that somewhere in your house or in your garage or even outside. And essentially, all the electricity that's being generated by your panels that you can't use at that moment, it gets stored in the battery. And then later on in the evening, when you're cooking meals and things like that, or even in the morning, if you're getting up early for breakfast and you're using electricity, hair dryers and things like that, your battery will actually supply that energy. So effectively, you're just storing the solar power for later use. So it kind of all works together as a little ecosystem. But you really need to understand, how big a battery do you need? How many solar panels should you put on your roof? And there's all sorts of legislation about that. So you can't fill your roof right to the edges with panels. There are rules and regulations that you have to abide by, especially if you've got things like Velux windows or chimneys on the roof. So actually, there's quite a lot to consider. And I think that was my first couple of videos. Were really looking into that in detail, just to kind of lay out the land, if you like, so that anyone who was thinking about getting into solar would at least know all the things that they had to be looking at. But if you go with a good installer, they will do a lot of that work for you. I mean, how do you know that you've got a good installer is another question. But coming back to what you said about the financial point, when I got solar, which was 2 years ago, it was like there was a mad rush on. We were in sort of COVID. COVID had just hit us. We were all at home, couldn't go on holidays or anything like that. So people did have capital that they could spend on something. Maybe they'd get their kitchen done up or something like that, or get some bedrooms repainted. Some people thought, well, maybe now's the time to actually invest in a solar and battery solution, especially now that the energy prices have gone up. So because everybody was doing that and I wanted to get my solar installation, I had to wait months.
Yeah, which was the same if you tried to do any building work or anything.
Yeah.
And obviously, I guess costs went up accordingly as well. So
I definitely bought at the top of the market.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. But because I was doing the videos, I was thinking at the time, with YouTube videos, you do get a share in the ad revenue. And I thought, well, that might help cover at least maybe some of the cost. Well, that was my thinking.
and then you saw how much you get.
Yeah, it was only when I actually, but it was too late then. I was in then.
Yeah.
But we definitely had savings. So I can tell you now that in the first year, so I got the solar installation done just over a year ago, and I ran the numbers. We actually didn't pay any electricity at all, and we received, I think it was just somewhere between 100 and 200 pounds back from my energy supplier, which is the same as yours actually, Octopus Energy. Fantastic, and that was in year one. So that, effectively that was an enormous saving. So by sort of looking further out, when's the payback point?
Yeah.
When do you get that return on that initial investment? For me, it's 8.5 years, so only 7.5 to go now.
Yeah.
And remember, I bought at the top of the market.
Yeah, sure.
So if someone was buying today, you're probably looking at 5 or 6 years, perhaps even less, because there are more installers out there. There's more availability of equipment. I mean, at the time when I bought, there was, shipments from other countries were really difficult, so prices were going up there anyway. So the more availability of equipment, more installers in the market, so there's competition there. But more than any of that, the price of the technology has just dropped enormously. So solar panels are just way cheap now. Battery prices, they are still quite expensive, but the prices are falling. And this year, you're looking at battery prices dropping maybe 25 to 50% in 1 year.
Wow.
And who knows where that's going to go. So I would say that even if someone's looked at solar and thought, well, this is just too expensive, they should look again.
Look again, yeah.
Because things are changing rapidly. Yeah.
And I guess the kind of savings you're talking about in that payback point is with a battery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a funny one. And I say it's a funny one because there's another aspect to this all. So the sun is generating electricity for you. Some of it you can use at that moment, which is great. What you can't use goes to charge your battery, but your battery is going to become full at one point. So what do you do then? What do you do with that energy? And you can actually export it. You can sell it back to your energy provider, and they will pay you for that. They won't necessarily pay you what you paid for it,
sure, but you'll get
but it'll be a percentage, yeah. And what's happened over the last couple of years is that rate. So at the time, I'm going back, say 2 years, when all the prices went up, you were getting on for maybe 30 pence per kilowatt hour, the unit measurement of electricity. And if you were selling it back to the grid, if you were lucky, you might get 4 pence. So, 10%, it's not great. But today, most of the tariffs that we're seeing in the market, especially from Octopus Energy, 15 pence. And of course, electricity is now, 22 pence, something like that, to buy. So you're buying at 22 pence, but you're selling at 15 pence. So in terms of your question, does it make sense to have solar and battery? You really need to do the numbers, and it's different for everybody, because it might be that you don't need the battery at all. You just sell what you can't use, and you'll get a good return from that. But there is another reason to have a battery, of course. If you're living in an area where you're susceptible to power cuts, if you've got the right battery, it will actually power your home if the grid goes down. And that can be really invaluable for some people, especially people who might have some medical equipment in the house or something like that, or they're running a business that requires their computers to be up all the time. So more than just the financial reasons, of course. And what I've found that surprised me, I suppose, the other reason for getting a solar and battery installation and an EV is for environmental reasons. And actually, I was really surprised at the number of people who didn't mind a longer payback. They were doing it to help the environment.
Yeah.
And, that's laudable. Not everyone is in a position where they've got, spare capital to do that. But there were more people than I thought that were in that position, and they wanted to invest in solar primarily for environmental reasons.
Yeah, I've found the same thing actually, just in my sort of circle of friends, people that have gone for solar,
Yeah.
possibly over half have done it not for financial reasons. And it's surprising to me, because to me it would be a financial decision.
Yeah, for me it certainly was, yeah. But actually, even if you're doing it for financial reasons, you're still helping the environment as well.
Product from it.
I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I guess the other aspect is what you'll find for many people, if you've got friends around you who've got solar, they'll probably want to show you all the equipment, all the software. They'll get their phone out of their pocket and show you all what's happening right now with the system. And you might think they've gone mad. This is the first thing they do when they wake up, how much charge is in the battery. And it is a bit like that at the start. I think for me, for the first few months, of course I had to do it because I was hopefully trying to educate people with the videos on the channel. So to do that, you kind of need to explain all about this. But over time, I think I'm the kind of person, I just want it to work.
And that's me as well. So I've looked at some of these things, and certainly some people I know, and I've thought this has become their number one hobby.
Yeah.
And I'm not at a stage in my life where I need another hobby. I need things to just work.
And it is like that. You can choose, and actually, as a hobby, it's not bad, because then you end up thinking, right, I've got this system. What else can I add to it? You know? And how could I improve on it? One other piece of equipment that you can add is a thing called a solar diverter. And what that does is, you remember when I was saying that the sun is generating electricity for you. You can't use it all. So it goes to charge your battery, but then your battery becomes full. So what do you do then? You can export it, or you could put it into this unit called a solar diverter. And what that does is heats up your hot water. So then you're not using gas to heat up your hot water. So many people do that. The only consideration is, because of the higher export rates now, it actually makes more sense to still export that electricity rather than heating your water. Now that sounds crazy, but I did do a video on that, that it kind of explains the rationale behind it. So it's really interesting. Over time, things will change. Tariffs are changing. I think did you say you were on Intelligent Octopus Go? Fabulous tariff. Fabulous because not only are you getting a really cheap rate, I think you mentioned 7 pence per kilowatt hour overnight to charge your car, but you can actually charge your battery at the same time.
This is what I was going to ask actually. Can you charge your battery overnight and then sell it back during the day?
You can. So if you think about the arithmetic on that, you're charging your battery at 7 pence per kilowatt hour, and maybe, let's say you've got a 10 kilowatt hour battery. You could then export that during the day at 15 pence per kilowatt hour and make a little bit of a profit. Now, it's not as clean cut as that, because you've got to cover the cost of buying the battery, so you have to amortize that. And you have to also remember that the energy that you put into the battery is not the same as what you get out. You typically lose around 10%. So there's another factor. But the good news is that for anyone who's really interested in working out the numbers on that for their particular situation, I've written a couple of utilities that do all the hard work for them. All they have to do is put in the size of the battery and things like that. In fact, you could even put in the location and the orientation of your house, the angle of your roof. That's another factor. And it will just work all that lot out. And then you can see how much energy you can generate from the sun over a whole year. And hopefully it's more than the amount of energy that you need in the whole year. The big problem, I guess, is that in the summer, everything's great. Because you're generating far more energy that you can use. You're exporting it. You're probably, rather than paying a bill at the end of the month, you're probably receiving money from your energy provider, which you have to get your head around that. But in the winter, everything's different. The sun's not as high in the sky. It's not out for as long. The weather's generally more inclement. So you're not generating as much. It can be maybe 20% of what you would do in the summer.
Right, okay.
Yeah. If only you had a battery that was big enough that you could store all that excess energy in the summer and then use it in the winter. You can't, because you'd need an enormous battery.
Which is where vehicle to load is going to be a very interesting thing.
Yeah, those are bigger batteries. So you think a typical home battery these days is anywhere between 10 and 20 kilowatt hours.
Yeah.
But vehicle batteries are, what, more than 80?
Well, I mean, the Tesla, you're looking at sort of 50. Some cars now, you're looking over 90.
Wow. Yeah.
Now, at the moment, Octopus are always at the forefront with everything, aren't they?
Yeah.
But they've come out with a vehicle to load solution, but you can only use it, I think, with an old Nissan Leaf at the moment. And the wall box you need for it's about $5,500, somewhere in that order.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it's early days, and yeah, the actual wall box solutions and the providers getting behind them needs to ramp up to bring those prices down, really.
And I suppose it's not unlike any other new technology, like, you know, the latest mobile phone. You'll always pay more, you know, and it's those early adopters that actually make it happen for the rest of the market.
Yeah.
So it will come in time. I mean, yeah, the vehicle to grid is quite an interesting one because it is a huge battery.
Vehicle to grid, vehicle to load.
Well, there's three different ones so vehicle to load is you can normally run a toaster from your car.
Yeah, or you can charge another car. Or, yeah, but vehicle to grid is what I'm talking about.
And there's vehicle to home, and I can never understand the difference between vehicle to home and vehicle to grid. They sound like the same things to me, but yeah, I am starting to do some research into that so I can actually do a proper video on it. It seems a bit early, like you say, there's not that many vehicles that support it, but it is coming. I think Tesla's going to make some kind of announcement, you know, within the next 6 months, 12 months on that. So we'll see. And usually when you've got a large company that's kind of leading that space, when they make an announcement, the rest of the market tends to follow.
Yeah.
But you will pay more for that in the early days. Yeah, that's just the way it is with technology.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But yeah, the tariff that you're on is just fantastic. It's such a great tariff, and to have that high export rate as well.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to see this from other energy providers. So I think E.ON has a similar tariff. I think they call it E.ON Drive or something like that, or E.ON Next. I can't remember. Similar pricing, in fact, probably slightly better pricing. But, you know, Octopus will come back again with that. And what people might not be aware of is the infrastructure that's required for E.ON to offer that tariff is actually being licensed from Octopus.
Okay.
So there's always more to it.
Having been a previous customer of E.ON's many moons ago, I have to say that the customer service experience with Octopus is just a cut above as well.
Yeah.
And the way the app works is, I don't know, it's just very easy with Octopus. And things may have changed at E.ON, but they stole several £1,000s from me for a few months. So,
all right.
Yeah, that's a different story. But it was a customer service disaster, and I knew other people with similar stories. And honestly, they'd have to pay me for me to go back to them. But yeah, other providers will obviously catch up, and then it'll be up to Octopus to try and get ahead of the game again at some stage.
Yeah, a completely open and free market, and I think that's what we want, and and the customer will always benefit from that. Yeah. Competition's always good. So I've been with Octopus for, I think, about 2 years. I went with Octopus even before I got my solution, and I've never had any problems with them. I think they're streets ahead of any of the other energy providers in the UK. And actually, I'm not sure I'm seeing many energy providers across the world that are in the same league as Octopus. So it's great to see Octopus are actually expanding their horizons. They're out in other countries now. So we'll see where that goes. Yeah. But definitely, I would say to your viewers, if they haven't thought about getting solar, just spend a little bit of time just researching it. You know, have a look at some of my videos. Perhaps you can put some links in your video description. Just spend a couple of hours, and actually you might find that this is something you want to do, for whether it's for financial reasons, environmental reasons, or even just to get a battery so that you can still have power. You can still power your house in the event of a power cut if you're living in an area that suffers from them.
Which is a great point that many people would not have considered. And obviously a lot of the UK does still suffer with power cuts fairly regularly.
Yeah.
So That's great. That's probably, yeah, a great sort of whistle-stop tour of an idiot's guide, if you like, to solar, because I'm certainly an idiot when it comes to solar. So thanks very much. Gary's channel is just an absolute hive of information. So links in the video description for that. Go and check it out. He's got plenty of subscribers, but he'd love some more. And yeah, it's just fantastic. We actually met because Gary called me about getting an electric car, and we got to talking, and this seemed like a great thing to do. And I thought lots of people on my channel will get lots of benefit from knowing about Gary and his channel. So
well, just on that point, Jim, you have this service where people can call you up and just arrange a time slot with you. And that's exactly what I did, because I was trying to get into EVs. I knew a little bit about them, but probably not enough to be that dangerous. And actually, I used your service, and it was fantastic. You know, we got through, I don't know how many questions that I had, and you were able to answer everything in a short time. So I'd recommend anyone who, you know, has questions for Jim on EVs or any other related topics, just to use that service. It was fantastic.
thanks very much, Gary. I'll pay you later. Thanks ever so much for watching, folks. Please give the video a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you on the next one.